welcome to the show.
Thanks for having
and
me.
And welcome to Toronto.
Thank you.
Many reviewers who see the show are just awed by how much you sound like Janis Joplin.
Yeah.
Is there a secret? I mean...
It's a physical and spiritual connectivity that I feel with her, and I have for a long time. And she was such a visceral artist, and to be able to go out there and you can be as over the top and as gritty as possible, and people just want more and more. It's just the best exchange of energy, because the more that the crowd gives us, the more I'm able to just throw it out. Yeah, and that's how she performed. And so I think it's just tapping into the crowd and like pulling their energy out. It helps me every day, because, you do it every day.
Tell me about discovering that you had this connection with her music and this connection with her music. Let's go way back to
my
when you
parents
first discovered. Yeah,
it's their generation. It's their generation's music. So it was on in the house, because I grew up like New Kids on the Block and Salt and Pepper and stuff like that.
I'm with you.
Right? But then my parents would play all this really good blues music and rock and roll, and it just really resonated with me and struck a chord. And I remember listening to "Piece of My Heart," where she does that scream, and it just literally perked my ears up like a little puppy. I was a little kid. I'm like, what is that? It's cool. Like, what is that?
New Kids on the Block aren't doing that.
Yeah, they are not doing that at all.
Yeah.
Not whatsoever. And it was just more real. And as I got older and started kind of honing my voice and figuring out where it lives and where it belongs, I could do this. I found that when I was singing along with her, my voice could kind of naturally sit in her life a little bit. And so that's how it kind of became to be like, okay, well, not only am I a fan, like I can actually do this,
When did you discover that energy relationship with the audience and how that can fuel your singing?
Pretty much instantly.
Okay.
It's especially playing her. It's a lot easier because they're such an eager audience and they want, but there's also a downside to it. We're kind of and it's just human condition. When you go to see a stand-up comedian, there's part of you that wants them to fail. It's the weird, but it's true. Mm-hmm. And they're like, he's not going to be fun. And then you're like, oh my gosh, that was the funniest show ever. But because of Janis, they're like, she's not going to. And then at the end of the show, they're like, So
that's
it's like
that's an interesting energy to play with.
It is.
You have to win them over a little bit.
You have to win them over. And I don't until halfway through the first act when we do "Piece of My Heart," because they're all waiting. And they're all waiting for that scream, and they're waiting for, and I mean, they're like, all right, we're buying this. And then after that, it's over. And then we're all having a good time.
The good thing about that is when you do win them over, they're really with you.
And they're having the best time. Oh, yeah, for sure.
What do you think is behind her enduring appeal?
I think it was that honesty. Everybody wants to be able to stomp their feet and scream at the rooftops and get their emotions out that way. And just in society, we're trained to keep your mouth shut and smile and keep your head down. And she refused to do that. And that counterculture was so important during the 60s. So she was a lot more to people than I'm sure she could have ever realized she would be. She didn't want to be a political figure or a figure for women's rights. I mean, she was the first original rock star. So I think that's why. I mean, she was the mold and broke it.
Do you think it was more the music or all those other things that you're talking about?
Oh, I think it was the music too, because it was it's like exciting, it's sensual. You got to remember, they were coming out of like the 50s. So before that, their parents' music was waltzes and boogie woogie bugle boy kind of stuff. I mean, I love that stuff too. There's a place for all of it. But then it was doo-wop, and then all of a sudden, it was Bob Dylan plugged in his guitar at the Newport Jazz Festival, and suddenly everything's turned on and cranked up, and kids lost their minds. And my parents say it was the best time. They really think they lucked out musically, just and culturally. Yeah.
Do you envy your parents for having lived in that time? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't change what you have now, but
New Kids on the Block is great too.
Oh my gosh! Just P.S. My best friend's like, they're having a cruise now, and I'm like, you know what? Stop, because like how all these artists are like doing their like, so I'm like, oh, the NKOTB cruise, but there's a '90s tour that's coming, with like Salt and Pepper and Tone Loc. I'm like, really? Okay. I'm like 12. All right.
It's not quite the same as the 60s, is it?
No, it's not the same. But what's so funny is those artists still play, a lot of them. And they're like in their 70s and in their late 60s, and they're still killing it. So there's just something, I don't know, some unbridled spirit in that generation.
This show is about more than just Janis Joplin herself. It's about, we learn about the women who came before her.
Correct.
Where do you see yourself in that lineage of female singers?
I would say I completely hold Etta James accountable for most of my desire to be a soul singer, because that's what I am. I can do Janis and I love it, but I'm a little smoother than that. It's a little more soul in, with the runs and things like that. But Etta James is in our show. Etta was one of Janis's influences. She covered one of her tunes, actually, at Festival Express here in Canada. And she attributes Etta James, Aretha Franklin, Nina Simone. I agree with all those. Odetta, who was a folk artist, and Bessie Smith, which to me, she was the queen of the blues. I mean, we didn't have enough time to put in Big Mama Thornton. We didn't have enough time to put in all the other women, because then the show would be 3 hours and everyone would be like, oh my God, can I go home? But I just think that Janis in the 60s, and I mean, she died in 1970, so she was still relevant during the 70s. And then there really wasn't another woman to come like knocking and down the doors and kicking and screaming until, say, like, even though it was 80s music, Pat Benatar. Mm-hmm. She was tough, Joan Jett, those kind of like real like.
Patti Smith.
Yeah, Patti. Yes, Patti Smith. And so I don't know.
So you consider yourself a descendant of Etta James?
Yeah.
Who else is in your
Shaka Khan.
Shaka Khan, okay.
Gladys Knight.
Yeah.
Elton John.
Nice.
Stevie Wonder.
That is nice ancestry to have musically. Okay, so you've played Janis Joplin on stage before.
Correct.
How does it feel for you as a musician to have this artist be so entwined with your career, such a big part of your career?
It's kind of a wonderful vacation, because I'm working on my new album. I was in Nashville writing, and it's like, well, I know I'm going to go back and do Janis for 3 months, and it's like revisiting an old friend. It's not getting in the way. Which I had a problem. I thought it was a cross to bear. Oh, you're going to be known as that Janis girl. But we did it right. I don't know. It worked to the place where I could maintain my identity and then also have her, because I am an actor also. So my musician life is my music and everything else. But when you get on stage, you get to go have fun and be somebody else in a different realm of artistic expression.
So it's totally not using the same creative energy that you're putting into your album, for example.
Yeah.
That's great. You've been nominated for a Tony for this role.
Yep.
Tell me about elevating your performance above an impersonator or tribute artist or something like that to the level of like a Tony nomination.
You're right. I believe it's that unabashed willingness to surrender to the person you're supposed to be playing and your craft, because a lot of girls can put on a pair of feathers and a pair of pink glasses and like put their voice in their throat and, work on a Carnival Cruise Line and be an impersonator. But it's so much more than that, because impersonators, to me, they just focus on the tableau of what the person was all about. Mm-hmm. Just that one, what's your Reader's Digest version of Janis Joplin? And we're multifaceted. We explore a lot of different parts of her life. So it gives me a lot more emotional range and a lot more fun to deal with as an actor instead of just an impersonator.
As an actor, tell me about your lineage.
Who
have you learned from?
Actually, I am a Viola Spolin taught improvisational actor first. And that helps so much with the crowd because they're different every night. And I was a Second City student. They had a satellite studio and theater and classes in Cleveland. And I lucked out and got to be part of that. And so I really started with, your classes in school and college and everything. But the Second City and the improvisation got me into my first improv company. And from there, boom. And I think that training helps me rein in the crowd because they do get out of control at times.
Once you've won them over?
Right. Yeah. But it's like, okay. It's like you're a maestro and you're conducting the band. I'm conducting the band. We're a band. That's not choreographed. That's not playing. And like sometimes I make them hold a note out longer because the crowd's going in so hard, or sometimes
and that's what Janis would have maybe done in the moment.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So that improv training has really helped, especially with this, because we do have fourth wall breaks. I am addressing the audience directly, and we have that give and take. So yeah.
I think it's really interesting that you started playing Janis Joplin when you were younger than she was when she died, and now you're older than she was after she passed away.
Right.
How has that changed your relationship to the character?
I am mad at her because she could have been so much more, and I feel like we missed out the whole 70s Southern rock movement and the Allman Brothers and Marshall Tucker Band, all these different artists that came out after she passed away. I mean, oh my gosh, Led Zeppelin. Can you imagine if they collaborated? And she missed out on all those opportunities. So I feel like a responsibility to portray her as honestly as possible. So to remind people that she was absolutely incredible. She was what I like to call an ordinary woman who achieved extraordinary things.
So you have felt a change in terms of your understanding
Absolutely.
of her.
Oh, and the material.
Yeah.
The older that you get, the more heartache you go through, the more you grow up. You approach the material so differently. It means so much more.
What were you thinking about Janis Joplin when you first played her?
Fire. Just fire. That's it. I was just like, I got to just go out there and bowl everybody over. And I realize now there's so much more finesse to it. And which came with grace, really, and letting her kind of guide me and tell me what to do.
Janis Joplin died when she was 27.
Correct.
Of a heroin overdose. What do you think was going on with her?
I know for a fact that it was a hot dose of heroin, and 11 other people, I believe was the number, died that weekend. She just happened to be the only famous person. She had been off it for a while. She was recording a new album. Her friends were supposed to come hang out with her, and she kind of got stood up. She was already drinking and had a fix kit in her room, and she knew better not to do it by herself, but something got the best of her, and she did, and never woke up. I don't believe that it was some sort of end of day. It was an accident.
You've said that you feel like she was lonely.
Oh, yeah. It is alone, and I couldn't imagine being the first female rock and roll star. It's hard enough now when you do it. You live in a world of men. Even if you're in a relationship, you have to be with the kind of guy that's okay with you being around guys 24/7, and there aren't a lot of those there.
Not now, and I'd imagine
certainly
in the 60s,
not then.
Yeah.
Exactly. And she said, the guys would all disperse and go, hang out with groupies, and she'd be sitting in her hotel room by herself reading a book, and people they're like, yeah, right, but that's so true. And it was a lonely place because a lot of women didn't like her. Either the girls that she went to high school with, she thought that she would go back for her 10th annual high school reunion and be like, I showed you, look, I'm a big rock star. And they could care less about her then, like they could care less about her in high school, and it broke her heart. Because they were just they were preps. They were a different class of people, and she couldn't believe that after all that hard work and everything else, it still didn't matter.
When did you discover that depth about her?
I had watched some of her interviews. She could be 20 different emotions in 5 sentences. And I was completely struck by that. And it was one of her Dick Cavett interviews. And he had just asked a question. It was when she said she was going back to her reunion. And he goes, oh, what, you didn't have a lot of friends back there? Oh, he goes, well, I don't have any. She goes, do you want to come with me? He says, well, I don't have any friends in your high school. She goes, neither do I, man. That's why I'm going. Right? And he goes, oh, you weren't received well in school, I think he asked. And she goes, they laughed me out of class, out of town, and out of the state, man. So I'm going home. And I was like, ooh, that's not that all-powerful, completely confident rock star up on that stage. That's a really tortured person inside. Yeah.
Before I let you go, you've got many shows ahead of you as Janis Joplin,
Yes.
Including Toronto, Winnipeg, and Thunder Bay.
Correct.
What would you miss about Janis if you ever stopped channeling her on stage?
The joy of that performance, to be able to because it's not classically attractive, but it's so sensual, and everybody just the experience you have, the communion you have with the people every night, and how it's different. That's what I would miss.
Mary Bridget Davies, thank you so much.
Thank you.